Hi there, welcome to the channel. I'm Kerry and you're watching the Christchurch Review of Books. Welcome back if you're a return viewer. I really value people that come back more than once to watch these videos. Without further ado, we'll launch into the third review I've filmed today. The other ones will be available on the channel at the same time. Now this book I'm talking about here is Cory Doctorow's latest, The Bezzle. Now, I was part of a Kickstarter funding effort to get the audio version of this book out into the world. Cory Doctorow's got strong views about copy protection and what have you, and some of the large players wouldn't let him release an audio book which didn't have copy protection on it, so he funded it himself. And as part of the rewards for giving him a modest amount of money, I got an e-book of his latest book, The Bezzle. And it is an excellent book too. Now, this is the second book that Doctorow has produced with the main character Martin Hench, or Marty Hench as he's known in the book. The first one being Red Team Blues, which came out in a similar way last year. Now, Cory Doctorow has become a favourite author of mine in the last few years. I think the first real thing I read from him was his collaboration with Charles Stross a while back. I didn't think much of that, but a few years back I read his book Radicalised, which is like, I think, 4 short stories, and it was the most really great stuff. He's on the ball with issues of the day. He's kind of got this really sharp descriptive prose, which is kind of reminds me of the earlier cyberpunk authors when they were describing things in the future, with lots of brands and items and technology described as the characters are using them or encounter them. And he does something similar, but he sets these books, in particular the Marty Hench books, in the present day. And he's talking about issues and things that confront us today, which leads me to one of the things I worry about with these books. They're going to date really soon. There's like today's now issues are going to be passé very soon. So these books are kind of like a limited shelf life maybe in that regard, unless you want to look back at what people were worrying about years ago, I guess. Now, Marty Hench's main character is a forensic accountant. I know that sounds pretty boring. He's a mild-mannered expert in things financial, and he's a large user of technology, so he's got a lot of thoughts about that too. Now, in this story, it's actually set before the previous book, Red Team Blues. This one's set a few years back. Red Team Blues was kind of billed as his last case, and this is one of his ongoing cases before that. And starts out that he's been the guest of one of his friends, Scott, to some exclusive parties on the island of Santa Catalina off the Californian coast near Los Angeles. So he goes there with Scott and mingles with all the rich and famous, and meets some beautiful woman, including a certain prostitute, high-class prostitute, who comes back into the story later. And while he's on the island, some of the local workers introduce him to a scheme they're running where they smuggle fast food onto the island, and it's kind of distributed like a drug dealing operation. The reason for this is that Santa Catalina wants to look like some type of paradise to people, and one of the rules they've enforced is no fast food chains or chain stores on the island at all. But the workers that work in the actual resorts and hotels are smuggling this stuff in from the mainland and selling it for a profit, or so they think. Marty Hench, while he's there, discovers that this whole scheme is like a kind of a Ponzi scheme, that some people at the top are getting really rich and everyone else is going to suffer, and the scheme's unstable and it's only kind of propped up by people involved. And one of the people he meets at one of the parties is this large gentleman who goes by the name of Junior. Junior offers Marty a job, and the job basically entails running the Ponzi scheme, which Junior has basically been in control of. Marty turns him down and just gains the ire of Junior, and then Marty, in discussion with his friends and the workers on the island, basically decides to take down the Ponzi scheme. And this involves basically getting various people to pull their money out and so on. This Marty leaves the island, and this effort continues, and he turns out that the scheme collapses, and Junior's furious, and then some time passes. And Marty one day finds out that his friend, the one that invited him to the island, was stopped by police and found to be carrying cocaine. and he gets a ridiculously heavy sentence for this. Marty's not amused, gets into touch with the prison and finds that Scott has been treated really badly in prison. This leads to an investigation of the whole Californian prison system, which has been privatised as a result of austerity and budget cuts and what have you. And various dodgy companies are running the Californian prison system, and it's really, really bad for the inmates, bad for the families of the inmates, and it's really not providing a good deal for anyone. And Marty decides to dig into this, and he finds there's various companies that have bought and sold the technology in the prisons, the running of the prisons. The prisoners are having to do everything via shitty third old generation Chinese tablets, which are really bad, but they have to pay for everything, books and video calls and everything via these tablets, and various companies have control of everything. Marty decides this isn't on, and he wants to help his friend Scott, so he starts subverting things and sending in books with drugs in them and all sorts of stuff, and but this doesn't seem to help. Scott's condition gets worse, he's beaten up, he's in prison hospital, he's running out of food as the companies go bust that run the prison, or go bad, or sell interest in each other. Everything doesn't seem to be going well, and Marty decides to try and help Scott even more, and this leads him into conflict with certain individuals who are controlling the prison system, and one of those individuals turns out to be a gentleman we met earlier on the Santa Catalina section, which you can use your imagination who, and it turns out that the whole thing is basically a revenge plot against Marty and Scott for earlier actions in the book. And this leads to Marty actually becoming physically in danger. He's beaten up by various people. There are policemen in some type of secret organisation which are working for other parties, enforcing their will. Scott has to basically leave Los Angeles and do things remotely. And basically, however, Scott and Marty, get their revenge. Marty Hench in these books he's basically a conduit for the author to tell us everything that's wrong with the world, but he has solutions. And Marty enacts his revenge, and at first things don't seem to be good for Scott, but then Scott has an idea and Marty has an idea, excuse me, and basically they get their revenge. And it's very satisfying. Now, these books are like thrillers. They're set at thriller paces. They have thriller elements, but when you look back at it, not a huge amount of thrilling stuff actually happens. A lot of it is Marty's thought processes, Marty's confronting bureaucracy, Marty dealing with technology. There's a lot of info dumps, basically the author relaying what he's discovered about various topics to us. But it was really fascinating. The way Doctorow writes this stuff, the descriptive prose I mentioned earlier, he's always into brands and technologies and what have you. He brings it alive for the nerdy people among us, and I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed this book better than Red Team Blues. In Red Team Blues, Marty Hench, an older Marty Hench, seems a little too powerful, too all-conquering, and he's irresistible to women. And I think that kind of rubbed me up the wrong way with the character in that book. But in this book, he's more of an everyman. He's more of an everyman hero against the system type of thing. And you kind of cheer for him along to get his revenge on the system for the way they treated Scott. And I think he's a more relatable character in the Bezzle. So that is The Bezzle by Cory Doctorow. I enjoyed it immensely. I was kind of sad when it ended after only about 220 pages. I think these books could be longer. Sometimes Doctorow does seem to rush to end his books. He spends so much time discussing the problems of the modern world, and the solutions are enacted in like a chapter in the end. But otherwise, really good. I understand that Doctorow wrote a whole lot of these Marty Hench books in one great outflowing of sentiment and writing when he was angry at the world, and he's been kind of editing them into soluble products since, so they are only getting better, and I hope the next one is even better. So that is The Bezzle by Cory Doctorow, and I'm getting a rough throat that I need to cough, so I'll end it there, and thank you for viewing this video, and we'll see you again soon.